The faint scent hit me first. Not his usual cedar, not even that new heavy musk he'd started wearing. This was something else. Sweet. Cloying. Like lilies left too long in a vase. My stomach clenched a cold, hard knot. Eleanor Vance. A woman in her late 60s was standing in our bedroom, the afternoon sun slanting too brightly through the window, making the dust motes dance. And there it was. A single, long, blonde hair, caught on the lapel of Robert Sterling's favorite navy blazer. He was in the bathroom humming a tuneless, cheerful song. Humming. Just minutes ago, he'd packed that damn blue suitcase, the one we took to the Amalfi Coast, for our 20th anniversary with the chilling precision of someone clocking out of our life. "I'm leaving," he'd said, his voice not angry, but final. Abandoning me for, well, I knew for whom. My breath hitched. I'd imagined this moment in nightmares mostly. But in those dreams, I screamed, I begged, I shattered something. Not now, not in real life. Here, with that blonde hair mocking me, I just breathed out through my nose, walked to the antique credenza, picked up the remote, and said, "Before you go, Robert, watch this." He walked out of the bathroom, a towel around his waist, still humming. His eyes, the ones that once held mine with such tenderness, blinked at the screen. He saw the grainy image, his silver sedan, the one he claimed was just for work commutes to Burlington, parked outside the Gilded Lily Boutique Hotel in Stowe. The day was just 3 weeks ago. The camera angled high like from a utility pole. His humming stopped. The color drained from his face. He adjusted the towel around his waist, a nervous twitch. "What? What is this, Eleanor? This is absurd." No reply. Only silence and the hum of the TV. I watched his face. The casual smirk he'd worn for months was melting. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Oh, the show was just beginning. The next clip loaded. Him stepping out of the car. Baseball cap pulled low. Sunglasses on, even though it was dusk. Just like he always did when he didn't want to be noticed. A woman, Seraphina Dubois, not quite visible, opened the motel door before he knocked. She pulled him in by the waist. The mask dropped. His mouth parted, but no words came. He blinked again, fast. "Is this what you've been doing, Eleanor?" he spat, reaching for anything he could weaponize. "Spying on me? This is sick. You're losing it." "No," I said, my voice shockingly calm, colder than a Vermont winter morning. "I lost you years ago. I just didn't want to admit it." His lip trembled, but not from guilt. From sheer, unadulterated panic. Because the next clip hadn't even started yet, and he didn't know how much worse it could get. The woman he once was trapped in that frame, calculating fast. "I never meant to hurt you," he tried. Things changed. You changed. You're always at your gallery. You barely talk to me anymore." I said nothing. My finger hovered over the pause button, but I didn't press it. Let it play. Let it all play. "I'm not the bad guy here," he muttered, his voice cracking. "You just don't listen. You never see me." I smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Oh, I see you now." On the screen, he was laughing in room 106, barefoot, wine glass in hand, twirling the chain of my necklace, the one I gave him on our 25th anniversary. That was when he dropped the suitcase. Not a dramatic toss. Just a slow release, like his hand had gone numb. He looked at the TV, then at me, then at the door. Oh, the beautiful, raw shame. He had grease on his knuckles and a permanent knot in his back when we first met. He was just 28, fresh out of the Marines, working double shifts at a crumbling roadside diner, saving every penny for his widowed mother's medical bills. That's what I walked into. Chaos disguised as a brave face. I was just a customer at first, an art student sketching in the corner booth of Peggy's Place. Quiet. Tired. But undeniably kind. He tipped too much, asked too little. But he noticed when I stopped wearing my grandmother's locket, when my worn canvas shoes started coming apart at the seams. One night after closing, he handed me an envelope. It wasn't a grand gesture, just enough to cover 2 months of rent for my tiny studio apartment near the Burlington waterfront. No note, just the unspoken truth. You're not alone. That was the beginning. He didn't sweep me off my feet. He held them steady when the floor kept shifting. When I cried after my first gallery show flopped its abstract pieces deemed too raw for the local market, it was into the sleeves of his work shirt. When I said, "I can't do this anymore," he said, "Then let me carry it a while." And he did. Quietly. Tirelessly. He paid for my art supplies, stayed up proofreading my grant applications while his knees ached from 10-hour shifts at the warehouse. He taught himself to hang drywall to fix the old Ford to budget meticulously, a skill an artist truly needed. I once called him my one-man repair crew with no ego. He wore that like a badge. On our wedding day, my dress was second-hand and 2 sizes too big a happy accident from a vintage shop. My vows, however, were laser-sharp. "You saved my life," I said. "You saw me, and I'll never forget it." But he did forget. Not all at once. It wasn't like a switch flipped. It was slower. Crueler. Somewhere between his first promotion at the corporate finance firm and his 3rd wardrobe overhaul, I stopped recognizing him. He'd be scrubbing mildew off the back porch while he was at team building retreats in Stowe's luxury resorts. He'd come home with stories of the guys from marketing and wine tastings I was never invited to. When I asked why, he said, "It's just not your scene, Eleanor, babe." Said with a pat on the shoulder like I was some tired old dog that needed to be put out to pasture. He started calling me dependable, with that passive-aggressive twinkle in his voice, a sting behind the smile. "You're just so dependable," he'd say, half laughing. "Too dependable to be exciting." I laughed with him the first few times. Then I didn't. The truth started bleeding through in moments too mundane to notice at first. He kept his phone face down. He started sleeping with earplugs, claimed my gentle breathing was too loud. Once he came home with a dark bruise on his shoulder. "I banged into a filing cabinet," he muttered, not looking me in the eye. Then there was the Christmas he forgot to buy me anything, saying, "We agreed not to do gifts this year, remember?" I hadn't. And yet, I stayed. God, why did I stay? Until 3 months ago. I'd been sorting through receipts for our taxes when I noticed something off. A bank statement tucked between pages of a gardening catalog. Strange in itself because he never read those. And there it was, a $4.12 charge from the Gilded Lily Boutique Hotel in Stowe. His name, his card. I brought it up that night softly, casually. "You go to Stowe last week, Robert?" He didn't even blink. "Oh yeah, guy's fishing trip, got a deal. Mike handled the booking. I just paid for my part." I nodded. Let it go. But the word fishing stuck in my teeth like a splinter. So I checked. The Gilded Lily wasn't a fishing lodge. It was a romantic getaway with canopy beds and wine service. No mention of base boats, no fishing guides, just fireplaces and private jacuzzis. I called, asked about the reservation, said I was thinking of booking the same room. The clerk hesitated, then read off, 2 guests, 1 king bed, booked by a Sterling. She paused. And a Dubois. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't confront him either. Just sat in the darkened kitchen with a cup of cold tea and an old photo album. One photo stood out. His graduation. He was beaming. I was behind him, arms around his waist, sunburned and proud. I had helped pay for that cap and gown, worked extra shifts at my small gallery. I'd paid for everything, it seemed, and now I was paying attention. It could have ended with the lie. He could have said fishing trip, and I could have forced myself to believe it. Could have swallowed that acid down like I'd done 100 times before. But something in his voice, It was too clean, too ready. And liars always sound most sincere when they've already rehearsed it in their heads a dozen times. I didn't say a word that night, just nodded, kissed him on the forehead. But something flicked on inside me like an old breaker switch I thought I'd disconnected years ago. The game was on. The next morning, I bought a motion sensor camera online. 2-day shipping. I told him it was for raccoons digging up the vegetable garden. He laughed and said, "Your paranoia is getting creative, Eleanor." Then he scrolled his phone and barely looked up. I mounted the tiny black box behind the trellis near the driveway, wired it into the garage outlet, and synced it to my tablet. A silent sentry. No blinking light. No hum. Just an all-seeing eye staring out at the world he thought I wasn't watching. The first week it recorded squirrels, rain, wind, our neighbor's cat. The second week he left every Tuesday and Thursday at exactly 6:50 p.m. He always said he was meeting his old college buddies for poker. He always wore that heavy musky cologne. He never came back before midnight. I made herbal tea during those hours, cleaned my art studio. Sometimes I just sat in the dark watching the footage stream live from my tablet. It became a ritual, but I didn't want confirmation. Not yet. A foolish part of me still whispered, maybe it really is poker with the guys. But then came the Wednesday slip-up. He said he was working late. Big pitch. No dinner. I said, no problem. Ordered takeout. Sat in the kitchen again sipping soup from a paper container. At 7:03 p.m., the motion camera blinked. He left in casual clothes and a long coat. Same heavy cologne. No big pitch. I leaned in. At 7:18 p.m., headlights appeared. Not in the driveway, too obvious. Just across the street, tucked behind the neighbor's hedges. I stepped closer to the screen, adjusted the contrast. The vehicle was a sleek black Porsche. Not luxury, but certainly not his usual commute car. The man stepped out, baseball cap low, sunglasses on at night. And that's when it hit me. Not the car, not the sneaking around. The walk. I recognized the man's walk, that stiff, upright, overconfident gait like his spine had something to prove. I'd seen it before. 5 years ago at a dreadful charity gala he'd dragged me to. Victor Moretti, a shark from a rival finance firm. The one he'd always called a snake in a suit. That's who was waiting across the street for my husband. I watched Robert jog to the car like a teenager sneaking out for prom. He kissed Victor as soon as he slid into the passenger seat. I didn't flinch. Didn't scream. Just rewound the footage. Watched it again. Then I copied the file and created a folder on my laptop. I labeled it May. Over the next 2 weeks, that folder grew. More drives. More late-night drop-offs. Victor never pulled into our driveway. Always parked across the street or around the corner like he knew better. Like this wasn't his first time messing with another person's life. I began cataloging timestamps, made a spreadsheet, recorded cologne usage, lipstick shades. Yes, his collar had started showing subtle marks, durations away from the house. Not because I didn't believe him anymore, but because I wanted to understand the depth of the betrayal. And something even darker. How long had this been going on? One clip stood out. He came home drunk. Alone. Sat on the porch swing. He didn't see the camera watching. He took off his shoes, leaned his head back, and whispered, "God, I wish she'd just leave." He didn't say who, but it didn't matter. Because I was already past the point of asking why. Now I was figuring out how. I became quiet in a way that made the house feel colder. I still kissed him goodbye each morning. Still made 2 cups of coffee, still fixed the dripping bathroom faucet without being asked. But the warmth was gone, not absent, just measured. And he didn't notice. Or maybe he noticed and thought it was just age, stress, routine. Maybe he convinced himself I was too dull to burn anymore. But I wasn't dull. I was deliberate. I started backing up every file from my camera. Duplicated drives. Stored one at my sister's place in Albany under the pretense of a digital photo project. When he was in the shower, I ran file recovery tools on our family laptop. Found old screenshots. Flirty emails with the initial V and references to weekends that actually feel like living. I went to the garage and flipped open an old binder of tax records. Found a copy of the house deed. Still had both our names on it. That night I stayed up reading property law forums until my eyes went red. Next day I visited a lawyer. Not a flashy one. No marble floors or secretaries with polite smiles. Just an old friend of a friend. The kind of guy who didn't care about your pain, just your paper trail. "Can I evict a spouse based on infidelity?" I asked plainly. The lawyer blinked. "Infidelity is not a legal reason unless you've got documentation, and even then depends on the state. What are we talking about here?" I laid out a drive on the desk. Video, timestamps, audio messages, working on more. The lawyer whistled. "You a cop?" I shook my head. "Art gallery owner." The man leaned back. "You're about to be a very organized divorcee." Over the next 8 weeks, I built something that looked from the outside like a return to routine. I still roasted chicken on Sundays, still showed up for my gallery shifts, still brought him his favorite single malt scotch. But inside, a different Eleanor was in motion. I started using his laptop when he wasn't home. He didn't clear his browser history. He never thought I'd look. I screen captured a message he typed and never sent. He says we should just rip the Band-Aid off. I'm scared Eleanor will take it badly. I know she'll be heartbroken, but I can't live this lie anymore. He was pushing Robert to confess. That meant they were close. Good. I didn't want to stop him. I wanted him to walk himself right into it. I updated my will, removed his name, added 2 animal shelters he mocked for wasting money on lost causes. I sold off some mutual investments we'd held together, cashed out discreetly, funneling money into an account he didn't know about. I created an entire paper trail for my future life, a life he wouldn't be part of. At the Gilded Lily, I booked it 2 days before his scheduled departure date. Same room number, same clerk. I brought a small duffel bag just to keep up appearances. When the woman at the desk asked if I'd stayed before I smiled and said, "Not yet. But I hear it's got good views." Inside the room, I stood still for a long time. The bed had fresh sheets. There was a faint stain on the carpet near the window. He probably never noticed. I took a picture of myself at the desk with my coffee. Another standing by the window, fully clothed, looking casual. When I got home, I placed those photos in a folder labeled Insurance. I wasn't sure if I'd ever need them, but then again, neither was he. I had no interest in explosive confrontations, no shouting matches, no slaps or slammed doors. That's what he expected. What I wanted was a documented truth, one no one could twist, gaslight, or talk their way out of. I didn't want revenge. I wanted recorded peace. The motel stank of bleach and desperation. I walked into the front office wearing my oldest flannel shirt and the demeanor of a woman who just wanted to mind her own business. The manager, a pudgy guy in his 60s with nicotine-stained fingers and a comb-over that had given up years ago, sat behind a battered desk, watching a game show on mute. A bell dinged above the door as I entered, and the man looked up like it hurt. "Can I help you?" he grunted, eyeing my posture, which radiated middle-class patience and barely contained calculation. "I stayed here a few weeks ago," I said casually. "Thought it was fine. Might book it again for next month. But, had a little situation with my car in the lot. Think someone bumped it." The manager blinked. "That's not really my problem, ma'am." "I get that. Was just wondering if I could review any of your outdoor camera footage just to be sure." "Cameras don't work. Been busted for months." He leaned back and scratched his jaw. I nodded like that made perfect sense. That's a shame. Liability-wise, I mean. The manager's eyes narrowed, but not with suspicion, more like the recognition of an approaching hassle. I waited. Then I pulled a brochure from my pocket. I install security systems, small setups. Real quiet. Maybe I could offer something mutually beneficial. The guy smirked. You offering to upgrade our cameras just to check your bumper? I smiled back. Let's say I'm just a generous woman who doesn't like loose ends. On my next visit, I arrived with two things: a tiny metal case of brand new motion cameras and 2 bottles of mid-shelf bourbon wrapped in a brown paper bag. The manager chuckled when he saw them. You're serious, he said, teeth yellow. Always, I replied, handing him the drinks. I spent the afternoon quietly swapping the rusted cams for sleek ones. At the end, I asked one more favor. About a flash drive, I said, slipping it across the desk. You got access to the backups, would love to compare some angles. The man simply shrugged and stuck it in the port. I left an hour later with over 90 days of footage. At home, I didn't rush. I poured myself a strong cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table, and began to scrub the timestamps. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Always around 7:10 p.m. The first time he appeared, he was in a sharp suit and a new silk tie. He stepped out of his car, hair impeccably styled, phone in hand, smiling that smile that used to melt me. That smile hurt more than any slap ever could. Then Victor appeared, casual, confident, smug. They hugged like they lived in each other's arms. Robert leaned into him, whispered something that made them both laugh. I paused the frame, zoomed in. My name was on his phone screen. Incoming call, Eleanor. He looked at it, stared at it for a beat, then declined it. Then he kissed Victor. I didn't look away. I didn't flinch. I rewound that 5-second moment, watched it again and again, the ignored call, the smirk, the kiss. I exported that clip separately and named it Priority. The next few recordings followed the same rhythm: arrive, glance around, slip inside. Always room 106, always Victor. One clip showed him walking barefoot to the vending machine laughing, as Victor followed behind with a towel draped over his shoulder. He wore a plush hotel robe. They waved to the manager. They didn't even try to hide it. I looped that scene too, but it was the voicemail that gutted me. He stood in the parking lot, phone in hand, recording a message for a friend. The mic picked it up through his phone speaker. He said, "No, I'm not telling her yet. Honestly, I think she'd rather not know. She's harmless. I mean, she's sweet, but come on. You ever met a woman so... Beige Victor's the opposite. He makes me feel like I'm alive again." Alive? I sat in silence for a long time. Then I stood up, opened the drawer where I kept the flash drive backups, labeled a new one, The Confession. I didn't slam anything, didn't cry, I just prepared. Because now the truth wasn't some abstract feeling. It was footage. It was timeline. It was proof. And it would be the noose he tied himself. He moved through the house like he was starring in his own play. Mornings started with coffee, my mug always waiting just the way I liked it, as if the poison of his betrayal could be diluted by routine. He packed his own lunch on Wednesday, tucked a sticky note inside with a heart drawn in red ink. "You work too much," he whispered, as I slid on my jacket, pressing a kiss to my cheek, like a woman in love. He smelled like that heavy, musky cologne, not the one I used to pick out for him. This one was new, younger. I kissed him back, smiled. He didn't notice the tension behind my eyes. He never had. That week, he made his specialty, roasted chicken, played jazz music in the kitchen, danced barefoot on the tile. When I asked how his day was, he'd say, productive, or nothing much, like nothing was bubbling under the surface. But Eleanor wasn't living in their house anymore. I was observing it. He floated through our world as if he was untouchable, like the universe was finally bending in his direction. His phone stayed glued to his side face, down even in the shower. Once I walked in as he quickly slid it under a towel and said, "Don't you knock anymore," with a smirk. I just apologized quietly. Every interaction was a thread in the rope he didn't know he was wrapping around himself. Friday came, the pivot point. That morning he hummed while scrambling eggs. "I've got drinks with Victor tonight," he said. "Client meeting. I might be late, so don't wait up." I sipped my coffee. "Tell him I said hello." He paused just for a second before replying, "Sure thing." At 6:48 p.m., he walked out the door in a sleek gray suit and his expensive Italian shoes. At 6:52, I backed out of the garage and drove east away from where he said he was going. I traced the route 3 times already, knew which alley gave the clearest view of Victor's townhouse in Burlington's South End, knew which car was his and which one was Victor's black Porsche SUV, knew the angle I needed to watch the front stoop without being seen. At 7:11 p.m., he pulled up. No hesitation. He grabbed a small overnight bag from the passenger seat, walked up to Victor's door, and here was the detail that twisted the knife. He used a key. His own. He didn't even knock, just slipped inside like he belonged there. I didn't flinch. I sat with the engine off, hands folded in my lap. The glow of the dashboard flickered across my face. I waited. 60 minutes. Not because I needed to see more, but because waiting was the ritual now, the slow, burning edge that kept me sharp. At 8:24 p.m., I drove to the post office. I mailed a small padded envelope, no return address, to myself. Inside was the flash drive. Not the original one. One of the backups, labeled in permanent marker, "Final Proof." It contained everything: footage, timestamps, text, captures the voicemail where he called me beige. I walked out of the post office with steady steps. When I pulled into our driveway at 8:52, the lights were already on. He was home. Back in the kitchen. Wearing an apron like the betrayal never happened. Like dinner was the balm that healed everything. There was jazz music playing, something light and breezy, garlic in the air, red wine breathing on the counter. "Oh, you're back early," he said, feigning surprise. I stepped inside, hung my keys, and walked to him. I kissed his forehead. He looked up, blinking. "What was that for?" I smiled, slow and clean. "Let's talk tomorrow." Talk. The blue suitcase stood by the door again. Same one. Same creased sides. Like it knew it had no business being there, but had shown up anyway, out of obligation. The zipper was open, half-packed, as if he wanted to perform the leaving, rather than actually do it. He stood in the hallway wearing a crisp linen shirt he hadn't touched in years. No makeup, but a slight flush to his cheeks. I sat at the kitchen table tying my sneakers like I had all the time in the world. He hovered, waiting for me to look up first. "I've been thinking for a long time," he began, his voice feathered with artificial sadness. "About us." I nodded, stood slowly. He continued, "He's the one I laugh with, the one who listens. You're safe, Eleanor. You always have been. But I can't pretend anymore. He's the man I really love." I walked past him without speaking. "Eleanor," he added a bit firmer, "I need you to understand. This isn't some affair. This is the real thing. I see," I offered flatly, scanning the TV remote. He blinked. Yes, exactly, he sees me. I finally looked up. "Well, before you go be seen," I said, "there's one thing I want you to watch." He rolled his eyes. "You don't have to try and stop me." I didn't say a word. Just turned on the TV. The screen buzzed to life. A flicker. Then a frozen frame. His car parked at the Gilded Lily. Timestamp 7:14 p.m. The angle was wide and unmistakable, zoomed in just enough to show the rear bumper and the expensive watch he always wore glinting as he stepped out. He froze mid-step. "What is this?" he hissed. I said nothing. The next clip rolled. Him entering the motel room laughing. Victor behind him, his hand on Robert's hip. "I can explain," he started. I raised a finger without looking at him. Just one finger. Not to silence him. Just to say, not yet. The third clip loaded. This one he was on the phone outside pacing. A voicemail to a friend. "No, I'm not telling her yet. Honestly, I think she'd rather not know. She's harmless. I mean, she's sweet, but come on. You ever met a woman so... Beige? Victor's the opposite. He makes me feel like I'm alive again." Alive. His voice cracked on the recording, from laughter, not guilt. Laughter. The color drained from his face. "Eleanor, stop. Please, this isn't the whole story." Another clip. This time inside Victor's kitchen. Robert's back to the camera. Victor's arms wrapped around his waist. They were toasting. "Soon," Robert said. "I'll tell her soon. I want this house. I want the clean break. I deserve it. Victor, he'll fold. Women like her always do." He dropped onto the couch. No dignity left. Legs trembling. Hands pressed to his lips. His suitcase stood next to him like it wanted to leave without him. "I didn't mean all of that," he choked. "It was just talking, you know how people talk." I muted the screen. Turned toward him, not angry, not smug, cold. "Did you pack your reading glasses?" I asked softly. "You always forget your reading glasses." He looked up, shaking. "Eleanor, Please, just let me explain. It wasn't like that." I walked to the hall closet, pulled out his spare pair of reading glasses, and tossed them onto the suitcase. "You'll need them where you're going." Then I picked up the remote again and clicked next. The screen played on. Relentless. Frame by frame. His second life unraveled. Each clip a scalpel peeling away whatever mask he thought he was still wearing. There he was unlocking the door to room 106 again. A different day. Different outfit. But the same key. The same practiced smile. He stepped inside and turned to kiss Victor before the door had even closed. No hesitation. Like it was home. "No," he whispered, standing in front of the TV now, hand over his mouth. "Eleanor, you shouldn't have... That's a violation." I didn't move. Didn't blink. The next clip. Cute. Him entering Victor's townhouse with grocery bags. He tossed his keys on the counter and pulled out a bottle of champagne with practiced ease like he'd done it 100 times before. A dog barked in the background. Victor's dog. He bent down to pet it like he belonged there too. I turned the volume up. His voice came through a speakerphone. "She's harmless, Victor. She folds his underwear. I swear he'd rather organize a tool cabinet than... you know. The woman is beige, but her pension... solid. Once we've got the house, we're set." I looked at him. He was pale now. Trembling. "I didn't mean that," he said, eyes wide, desperate. "That was just... It was a stupid joke I was venting. People say things they don't mean." But the video didn't stop. Next clip. Them in bed. Tangled sheets. His phone screen visible, a text chain between him and Victor. I had zoomed in, enhanced. Frame by frame, almost done pretending. I feel like a parasite Vic. Victor's reply, "You're not. She's just an investment. It's called ROI. Robert's response, ROI with a gallery income at that." I finally looked away from the TV. He stood frozen. And then the suitcase slipped from his hand. A soft, pathetic thud on the floor. Like the air had finally told the truth he was too proud to admit. He dropped next to his knees. No dignity left. Legs trembling. Hands pressed to his lips. He reached for my arm, but I stepped back. No anger, just a blank, unbearable stillness. "Eleanor," he said, voice cracking. "I didn't mean any of it. I was scared. I got caught up in something stupid. Please, let's just talk. We can fix this." I moved toward the door. He crawled after me. "Please, please, I was wrong." "Okay, I made a mistake. We've been through too much. Don't let this be the thing that ends it. I didn't even know how to stop it. I reached for the doorknob. He sobbed now hands, clutching at my pant leg. You're a good woman, Eleanor. You've always been a good woman. I paused, turned my head slightly, and said in a voice colder than he'd ever heard, No, I was a blind woman. Then I opened the door and stepped out. He screamed after me. Not words, just a raw, feral sound. The kind people make when their stories collapse, and there's nothing left to hide behind. The door clicked shut behind me. The screen still played, but there was no one left in the room willing to watch. He didn't care about the neighbors anymore. Not when he was on the floor clinging to my leg like a man stripped of every illusion he thought he could control. Tears streamed down his face, smudged with nothing. He hadn't even worn any. It was just the wreckage of his pride melting down in real time. He wasn't crying out of heartbreak. He was crying because he lost the script. Please, Eleanor, he choked. I was scared I was stupid. I didn't know how to leave. I didn't want to hurt you. I turned back toward him, and for a moment his face lit up. Hope. Idiot hope. As if this was the part where I'd get soft kneel down, say something like, Let's go to therapy. But I didn't kneel. I didn't even blink. You didn't lie because you were scared, I said. My voice was calm, measured, final. You lied because it worked. He froze. It wasn't just a sentence. It was a verdict. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. Thick. Sealed. Unbothered. Dropped it beside him on the floor. He stared at it like it might explode. With trembling fingers, he tore it open. The first page was simple enough, divorce petition. My signature already at the bottom. Attached to it was a single yellow sticky note in my handwriting. This footage has not been shared, but if needed, it will be. You can't, he breathed. I didn't reply. Eleanor, I'll lose everything. His voice cracked into something less human, not rage, not grief, fear, the cold kind, the kind he never expected to feel with me. I stepped toward the threshold, stopped just long enough to say without turning my head, Then you'll finally know what I gave you. The door opened. Daylight poured in. He didn't chase me this time. He didn't scream. He just stayed there, crumpled on the hardwood, holding a document that told him the story wasn't his anymore. I walked out into the sun, past the hydrangeas I'd planted alone, past the mailbox I'd painted after he said it made us look low income. I didn't look back. The gate closed behind me with a click. Not dramatic. Just final. The house was still. Not the stillness of grief. Not the aching void of loneliness. No. This was the stillness of clarity, of air cleared by fire. I sat in my favorite armchair, the same worn recliner, same chipped ceramic mug in hand. The taste of my homemade chamomile tea grounding me to something real. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. The TV set, black now, powered off. The drive with all the footage was still in my desk drawer, untouched since morning. But that night, as the sky outside softened into that dull blue of late dusk, I did one more thing. I logged into my cloud backup. There, hidden among the hundreds of folders labeled with dry, practical names, taxes, Tonsard 24, gallery receipts, camera footage sorted, was one marked only as for me. I opened it. Inside a single video file. Timestamp, 13 months ago. He had been working from home that week. Back-to-back Zooms, he'd said. Annoyed that I dared ask what was for dinner. He didn't know his mic had stayed live after one of the calls. I had heard it then. Faintly. Through the walls. I hadn't asked. Just checked the webcam logs later that night and downloaded what the app auto-recorded. I clicked play. His voice filled the quiet again. But different this time. Unfiltered. Raw, less guarded than any lie he'd ever spoken to my face. "She's just dull, you know," he said. "Probably sprawled on the couch in that bathrobe she only wore when she was hungover or smug. I mean, she's sweet. Predictable. Like a dog you don't really notice until someone asks, 'Hey, is that thing still alive?'" Laughter from the other end. Victor's. "So why stay?" Victor asked. Robert sighed. "Because she won't do anything. She's just a quiet woman. She'll stew. Maybe write a note, cry in the garage. But she won't fight. Not for me, not for herself. Not ever." I paused the playback, watched his frozen frame on the screen. Mid-sentence. A ghost now. And then, without flinching, without ceremony, I selected the entire archive, every drive, folder, every clip, every enhanced screenshot, every backup, every contingency plan, and hit delete. A confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure this cannot be undone?" I clicked yes. Gone. He wanted a reaction, wanted to feel powerful through my pain. But I had outgrown reactions. I didn't need court battles. I didn't need neighbors whispering. I didn't even need his shame anymore. I had dignity, and that was louder than any revenge. I took a sip of my tea, leaned back, and exhaled. No smile, no rage, just the weight of peace settling into my bones. Then I whispered to no one and to everyone, "Oh, honey, the things we learn when we finally open our eyes." From Grandma's journal, that story, friends, is a tough one to tell, but it's a testament to finding your strength even when your world turns upside down. Sometimes the quietest people have the biggest storms brewing inside them, and the most reliable ones can be the biggest deceivers. It's about seeing clearly even when it hurts and choosing your own peace above all else. Remember, your worth isn't tied to someone else's choices. What do you think? Have you ever felt that gut feeling that something was wrong, even when everything looked fine on the surface? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. And remember, you're not alone. If this story resonated with you, or if it made you think, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to Grandma's Journal for more stories of life love and learning to stand on your own 2 feet. It truly means the world to me.